Good evening and a very warm welcome to everyone. We are here to witness the launch of the School of Liberal Studies, marking the beginning of a new chapter in the illustrious journey of UPES, the University of Tomorrow. I am Dr. Manjari Chaturvedi, Assistant Professor with the School for Life at UPES. UPES is a UGC recognized university and has been accredited Grade A by the National Assessment and Accreditation Council, NAC. In addition, the National Institutional Ranking Framework, NIRF, Ministry of Education, has ranked UPES amongst the top 100 universities to study in India. The university has received 5 stars on employability, placements, academic development, program strength, and campus facilities. We offer industry-aligned and specialized graduate and postgraduate programs through our 7 schools: School of Engineering, School of Computer Science, School of Design, School of Law, School of Business, School of Health Sciences and Technology, and School of Modern Media. And now, it's our 8th school, the School of Liberal Studies, which is all set to open the doors to a revolutionary change in the education process by setting it free from the traditional silos. To talk more about our path-breaking initiatives at UPES, I invite our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Sunil Rai, to deliver the keynote for the launch.
Very good evening to this momentous day in the history of UPES, the University of Tomorrow. Housed in the scenic hills of Dehradun, we boast for one of the finest centers of learning, outstanding infrastructure, teaching, learning, laboratory facilities, and so on and so forth. The university is also called the Startup University. We have our initiative called Runway. Runway encourages young budding entrepreneurs and take them in their journey of entrepreneurship from ideation to completion of installment of their companies, and we handhold them through an accelerator system to make a success out of their businesses. As we speak, there are more than 40 businesses are running successfully from the students and faculty of UPES. Our industry collaboration is very involved and integrate. The industry participates right from the time of designing the curriculum, delivery of curriculum. Industry also participates in developing these youngsters in the respective domains. No wonder that we have such an outstanding placement record. We on our part are involved in several co-projects with the industry in the area of research and product development. It's a unique feature of this university that the students can design their own degree, design your own degree initiative, wherein out of 158 credits which an engineering student is to earn to complete the degree, the student can choose as much as up to 30 credits to choose the subjects that he or she wants to learn. Not only that, an engineering student can choose 6 subjects in another discipline, say business, and attain a minor in business. They can, besides their own specializations, they also have an option to go in for another specialization from other school. The university has an outstanding record as far as digital preparedness is concerned. In the pandemic, within 3 days of announcement of lockdown, the university responded well. All curriculum delivery went online, curriculum completed on scheduled dates, examinations completed on scheduled dates, in a proctored mode. And it is for this reason that for QS gauge rankings, the university has for consecutively 2 years scored 150 out of 150 points. The digital initiatives of the university run the entire life cycle of student, right from admission to placements, and they also run for the entire processes at the university administration and student life cycle management. The university had taken a bold step in 2020 July, when we instituted School for Life. We prepare our students for the life as the School for Life goes. Again, out of 158 credits, 48 credits are committed by all programs for School for Life. 18 credits being for the exploratory courses, 15 credits being for signature courses, which is the courses which make them distinguished from others. For example, courses in artificial intelligence, machine learning, creativity, entrepreneurship. Irrespective of your degree, all students go through these programs. And the best of it all is the soft skills, life skills, which are given almost about 15 credits, which are given in communications, finding their larger purpose in life, environment, sustainability, and so on and so forth. The students are therefore prepared for the world to take care of any eventuality. Now the School for Life will become a part of the newly launched School for Liberal Studies. The industry participates in the classroom, in the delivery, in all our programs. A School for Modern Media, the programs are run by Facebook, run by other Adobe and other media companies. The industry co-designs, co-delivers, co-evaluates, and remains with the university and with the students throughout their life cycle. Yet another strong feature is that at UPS, it's compulsory for all the students to engage in sports and cultural pursuits, irrespective of their programs. Sports and culture, CSR, environment sustainability, people sensitivity are not a matter of hobby or a choice. These are not extracurricular activities at UPS. They are very much part of the curriculum, wherein the students are graded. One of the initiatives of School for Life, Srijan, wherein all 3,500 students from the first year batch of 2020, in their summer term in 2021, May, went and did their internship with the NGOs. More than 450 NGOs are registered with UPS. All students, 3,500, are actually working with NGOs for 6 weeks during the summer term, and they are then sensitized to the people issues, and thereby they become sensitive and passionate human beings. The university has a fabulous record in terms of gender sensitivity. It pleases me to report here that we have got the highest girl intake ratio of 32%. We increased from 23 to 32 in just about 3 years' time. We offer extra scholarships to girl children. Up to the 25% of tuition scholarships are given to all the girl students who join UPS. We are also giving free ships to those students who are coming from socially challenged families. And there are more than 50 such students who are being supported by UPS in terms of those scholarships. Our CSR initiatives are lauded by the whole state. There are 11 villages that we have acquired, and we are supporting these villages for their needs of health, education, skills upgradation. And some of these villages are top in the hills, very inaccessible. The university actually supported the state during the pandemic, where students and faculty actually were there to support the society. The university actually donated more than 60 ventilators, oxygen generators to the government of Uttarakhand. And it pleases me to report that all these were used in the hills of Kumaon and Garhwal, where it was difficult for people to survive. All the villages around are supported for healthcare. We also provide to our students counseling service. For our staff and so on and so forth. We call it We Care initiative of UPS. UPS, therefore, is a university of tomorrow which cares for its students, staff and faculty, and the society at large. And now the feather in the cap of UPS, this momentous day by the launch of School for Liberal Studies, a school which is going to prepare students who will make difference to the society with this kind of liberal studies, as our Dean, Dr. Shubhashis, has already designed these programs where students will be sensitized to the real issues and would therefore be contributing to society and nation building. I am wishing with all of you the School for Liberal Studies an outstanding launch and an excellent tenure in preparing the students for life and preparing the students who will make a difference to this nation and to the world at large. Thank you very much. I congratulate the Dean, Shubhashis, and his team for taking on this mantle of leading this School for Liberal Studies, which is going to be a school which the rest of the educating world will always look up to. Wishing all the very best to the School of Liberal Studies. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.
Thank you, Professor Rai, for setting the context for the School of Liberal Studies, which is pioneering a new future for 21st century learners. I would like to now play a video to share what our new school has to offer.
Technology is transforming individuals and societies. While it improves our lives, it also throws up a digital divide. At UPES School of Liberal Studies, learners will be encouraged to harness the power of digital technology and data science to become effective problem solvers. They will be design thinkers, formulating innovative solutions for the society. They will be trained as anticipators of challenges who could prevent future problems. The school's objective is not only the pursuit of knowledge, but alongside, build empathy in learners and help them collaborate with diverse groups of people. School of Liberal Studies classroom activities will have interactive sessions and experiential learning where students will apply classroom teachings to real-world problems. The school will have a unique transdisciplinary approach, enabling students to co-jointly look into 6 aspects that impact human lives. There will be focus on enabling research. Each course will end with open and topical questions. The school will offer global exposure through some of the best universities in the world, enabling exchange programs, joint research, and much more. All this in serene Dehradun, in the foothills of the Himalayas.
Now that we have seen the way in which School of Liberal Studies will deliver #unshackled learning, let me introduce the Dean of the School of Liberal Studies, Dr. Shubhashis Gangopadhyay, eminent economist and the founder and director at India Development Foundation. He has been advisor to the Finance Minister in the rank of Secretary, Government of India, and was the founding Dean of Humanities and Social Sciences at Shivnadar University. He has been an advisor to the Competition Commission of India, held several high-profile public policy advisory roles, and been a consultant on policies to various ministries, including finance, planning, industry, and rural development. I now invite Dr. Gangopadhyay to introduce the distinguished panelist.
Thank you, Manjari. We are now going to go straight into a panel discussion. The panelists we have for today are highly acclaimed in their fields of research and exemplary in their professional achievements. They're also members of our advisory board, the school's advisory board, and I greatly appreciate the support and the enthusiasm with which they have come on board in spite of their busy schedule. I feel privileged to be working with them in building up the school, and I will now introduce them to you one by one. I first call upon Professor Dipankar Gupta, retired professor from the Center for the Study of Social Systems, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Professor Gupta. I think we'll get him back soon. These are the technical glitches. We have to live in a Zoom world. The second panelist is Narayanan Srinivasan, who is professor and head, Department of Cognitive Science at the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. Welcome, Narayanan.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Next, we have Nandini Chatterjee Singh, who is a cognitive neuroscientist and currently senior project officer at UNESCO MGIEP. Welcome, Nandini.
Thank you.
Next, Nawtej Dosanjh, President and CEO of MirraU, which is a startup university in Florida, USA. Welcome, Nawtej.
Thank you, SG.
My good friend, Robert Lensink, who is professor in the Faculty of Economics and Business of Groningen University. Welcome, Robert. Sanjay Mitra, professor of practice at the School of Public Policy, Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Shugata Majid, distinguished professor at the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade and former vice chancellor of the University of Calcutta and an eminent economist.
Thank you, Shubhashis. Thank you, UPS.
And finally, last but certainly not the least, Vijay Mahajan. He is the CEO of Rajiv Gandhi Foundation and director of the Rajiv Gandhi Institute for Contemporary Studies, New Delhi. Having introduced the panelists to you, it's time for us to now start the panel discussion. And I'm going to start with Shugata. Shugata, you have a huge reputation in working with youngsters, and we have been deeply involved both as a researcher and an administrator in academia. Having seen generations, right, of students, do you feel that there is a need to change our approach towards how we design our curriculum for our students?
I think that's a very, very pertinent question to ask anyone who has been involved in teaching or training students up through the career. If you find, one issue that is very, very important is that one has to admit that we have entered a digital phase, a phase of systems to educate our students which are very different from the ones that we were used to for a considerable length of time. So in a way that we are in a different world, and the curriculum, the way we want to take the students forward, the way we want to update and upgrade ourselves have to be, these ways have to be very well thought out. Now, having said that, one important issue that I often found, and one important lacuna that I often found in the standardized classically oriented syllabus, particularly for the liberal studies program, has been that the students are often unaware of the the surroundings in terms of which they engage themselves every day. That is their social neighborhood. So I can think of the local knowledge, the national knowledge, the regional knowledge, the acquaintances with these kind of environment, their social neighborhood and so on, that seem to be separate outside the curriculum, outside the formal mode of training or teaching. And they are sort of entrapped in terms of a syllabus, in terms of very standardized, homogenized, and quote unquote, intentionally global and so on. And eventually that does not help. So you find out that there are very brilliant students who do not have very significant perceptions about problems that they encounter and how their training and teaching can lead to make them better equipped in
So,
terms of handling those problems.
so
So
you're
that's a very
saying,
important issue.
Shrigata, so you're saying that as students get more and more educated in our higher education system, they tend to get more and more detached from where they are and the community around them?
I think that the pattern of education and the syllabus and everything has a tendency to make them deviate from there. But it is also important to understand that always there would be a set of students who would actually see through these problems and try to sort of see that how they can actually make a balance between what they are being trained and what they see around them or contemporary issues and problems. It is more of a lacuna, more of a gap that our teaching communities have. I think the teachers, in many occasions, being a part of that system, I am myself, I'm also some sort of, accounted for that. But the point is, the teachers have to always update, upgrade, and make students believe that things that he have been exposed to, things that bug him, that bother him, are actually those which we are dealing in the class, even in terms of in some abstract modeling or some sort of abstractions or some sort of a global kind of a framework which might have been inherited from somewhere else or something. So I think this is part the problem of the curriculum. It is not updated properly, not become, it's not very innovative, and part of the problem lies with who are training these guys, so they have to also try to make a balance, make the course more interesting to the students, and the students should be interacting not only among themselves with the teachers but also with the problems that tend to affect them and the society at large that they live in.
Let me then go to Sanjay. Sanjay, you are a professor of practice and someone who has worked at the highest level of administration before entering academia. How would you respond, especially when he says that it's also our fault that we, are not conscious of this disconnect that we are developing among the students? What would you say to that?
I agree with Professor Mahajan. I saw it from, he produced the students who came to work in the civil service, and I worked with them. And there is a tremendous, the last several decades, we have moved towards this techno solution that everything can be done in a techno manner. There is a technocratic.
No, wait, sorry. I'm going to interrupt you there. Are you saying that Shugata students suffered from the same problem?
Shugata students came to work for us, came to work with me.
And you noticed that they suffered the same problem that you were referring to?
Yes, I did, to a very large extent. They became, we have now, there is a...
Oh, yes. No, I of course share the responsibility. In spite
Sorry,
of
yes, go ahead, Sanjay.
No. Once having passed to the education system, the main change that has happened is that there has been an increasing influx of technically trained and technically competent people into the public policy arena. It's as much in a given cohort, as much as 75% could be from that group. So there is a great faith in technocratic solution, of late in digital solutions. The fact that there is a number to everything means that it must be the correct solution. And without realizing that every such construct, every such technology has some kind of an ideological thing backing it up, which may not be readily apparent. The other big change is the inability to communicate well. This has to be taught. If you see in public domain, in the armed forces, this is taught. They are actually taught how to put their views across. And if you see the difference in the way people interact with the press and media during crises, during natural disaster or during COVID, you'll realize they're unable to communicate cogently. And the thinking has also become very linear. Maybe earlier, people in the public policy arena were not that adept at, in technology or digital issues, but they could communicate and probably they could think laterally. So I think this liberal studies will provide maybe a certain kind of leavening to the very hard kind of development that has taken place. when it comes to students who have come into public policy, which is my limited interaction with students. I hope I make.
Sanjay, you just said that there is a lack of communication ability among the younger generation, and we have to really train them for that. But is that not also a reflection of their inability to or lack of training in critical thinking? Because once you can think through an issue, doesn't it become easier to communicate? Because then you're not all over the place. You know exactly how to organize your thoughts and then how to express it. But you may be grammatically wrong, right, in your communication, but you can at least get the idea across.
I agree with you, because you are now being taught that just because something is done through a numbers process, it's quantitative, and the answer is a single number, that it must be correct. And there is no attempt to explain that how that number came, whether there are ifs and buts to getting that number, how would you like to interpret it, how is it to be applied, things like that. And particularly if you see recently, all the innovations in government have been very IT driven. There's nothing bad in it. It has yielded value in many cases. It has also not yielded value in many cases, because there was this belief that it must be correct because it comes through a technical process, and there is no attempt to communicate to the wider people. One great example is Arogya Setu. Look at the amount of controversy it created, and if it had been a little more forthcoming, little more maybe Professor Chatterjee and Professor Srinivasan can talk about this more. But this is a great example of how even a well-intentioned initiative can run adrift if it is not explained properly. Thank you.
Vijay, let me come to you now. In spite of all your heavy-duty training from in the technological institutes that Sanjay just mentioned, you have immersed yourself in working with citizens and their daily problems. Yes. So what are the trainings and skills that we are trying to identify that the coming generations need to solve what I would call citizen problems efficiently and effectively? Vijay, you may be muted.
So can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can. Thank you.
I wish I was 16 years old when I joined IIT, and instead I would have joined the School of Liberal Studies. And I say this because, when I was in IIT, this was the 70s, there was a great faith.
By the way, Vijay, we do not age discriminate. So you can join even now.
Okay, great. I will. So, there was that was a period when there was some discomfort with mainstream technology, but, Schumacher's book, Small is Beautiful, had come out. Limits to Growth, that study had come out. And, we were beginning to ask questions about going beyond the technology fix. That's how I came into the world of rural development. And when I actually went to the villages, I realized that technology is a very, very, very small part of the solution, and it's, in fact, the problem is so large and so that one needs to diagnose it. And there one needs an understanding of humanities and social sciences and a lot more. It was too late for me to then go to a proper university, so I instead went to the Indian Institute of Management and learned something about human behavior there. But even that I found, and later I went and started another development organization, and I found that any big change requires a deep understanding of political economy, of capital markets, of the policy making process, and so forth. So, and what Mr. Mitra just said is so true, that, to try and think of these things as something that can be neatly modeled, which we engineers do and quite successfully, and economists try to do and not so successfully. But this pitiable faith in quantitative models is really what the 20th century left us with. And we need to go back to a deeper understanding of human behavior, both individually and collectively, including the distortions that come into it, due to the use of power, due to different starting endowments. And we have to, and I want to end by saying, since Dipankar is here, to actually, a nation is eventually ruled by its elite. And what we need, Dipankar uses the phrase, the elites of calling, and we need to educate our elites of calling more broadly, more liberally, so that they can truly serve the nation and not come up with techno fixes. Thank you.
Since you mentioned Dipankar, so I will go to him after you.
Okay.
But before that, I want to ask you one clarification. You talked about the gap between what technology achieves and what technology is meant to achieve, right? And for that second bit, you believe that technology has to talk, right, to non-technologists or more humanistic disciplines to understand what citizens want. But do you think that the current technology, the new digitalization that is going on, the data that are being used and the ways they are being used, do you think that this is a huge enabler which we didn't have at the time you first had this experience?
See, like every technological invention, from the wheel to fire to to the steam engine to now computers and in between nuclear energy, technology is dependent in the hands of who's using it and for what. So this digital technology can actually convert all of us into a 1984. And biotechnology can convert all of us into a brave new world, those two dystopias.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, these two can be greatly liberalizing. And that choice is a social choice. That choice is not made by technicians. It's made by politicians. It's made by people I don't mean by politicians as in just elected leaders, but people participating in the political process. And for us to be better prepared for that, we need a wider education and we need to get beyond the digital fix. I mean, for someone who's grown up using computers from 1970, I really find it amazing how much faith common people have in computers and that they'll solve all their problems. They will not.
Dipankar, first I want you to comment on what he said about the elite and decision-making in societies. You have to unmute yourself, Dipankar.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy that Vijay raised that issue of elite of calling. And I think that is very important because, you see, citizenship is not something that comes easy. It's a very difficult project. And we've been led to believe by a number of people, and some of them are pretty well known, that as if citizenship and democracy are so simple. You just go there and you vote, and you say everybody has the right to vote, so everybody is a citizen. And that makes citizenship very simple, and actually that rendition is wrong. Citizenship is a very, very difficult process, and it needs elite of calling leaders to actually spearhead this process. It doesn't come naturally. Why doesn't it come naturally? It doesn't come naturally simply because it is anti-prejudice. To fight against prejudice is the basic principle of citizenship. In other words, what citizenship first and foremost guarantees is an equality of status at base, upon which you can build inequality of structures. But for that equality of status at base, you need education and health for everybody at the same level, at the same kind of specialization and finesse. Now, for that to happen, you need to have leaders who are extraordinarily farsighted. You see, nothing that happened in citizenship happened on their own. There were leaders at every step of the way, from adult franchise to suffragette to abolition of child labor to pension scheme to whatever. Eventually, for gay rights and lesbian rights, all of these are actually leadership led. And only rarely do we have leaders of this caliber who can take citizenship forward. So citizenship is a very, very delicate plant. It has to be nurtured very carefully. And the moment you take your eyes off the ball, it goes back. So citizenship doesn't progress in a linear fashion. It goes forward and back, and only good fortune will help us find a leader of eminence who will take it forward. And one of the reasons why citizenship is difficult also is that we don't realize too often that who we are, where we are really outcomes of a natural lottery. It is either good luck or dumb luck that we are where we are. And that is something we have to constantly be aware of. And the final shape that citizenship will take is unknown. You see, years ago when you had adult franchise, we thought, well, it's all done. Then came women who wanted the vote, then it's done. Then came minorities, oh, it's done. Now we're finished. Citizenship is complete. But no, it wasn't complete. Then came universal health, universal education, and now, as I told you earlier, the gay rights and so on and so forth. Citizenship is constantly expanding its frontiers. And because it's constantly expanding its frontiers, it has to communicate effectively, and for which you need leadership. Now, once you put all of these in place, you'll see how closely citizenship is related to science and development. Because like science, citizenship cannot suffer prejudice. If prejudice is there in science, science will not go forward at all. And the final shape of science is unknown, like in citizenship. Today we think we've done it all, but you don't know what citizenship will excavate tomorrow. Likewise, science too, you think you've got everything done. Newton was there, and even Kant said that nothing more needs to be done. Now Newton is there, has done everything. But then so much more has happened since then, simply because science does not know limits. And to be able to do this, you have to be able to communicate. So you have master scientists who are not only good at the job, but also great communicators, just like you have leaders in politics and civic affairs. And this is why I feel that citizenship and science have a very close relationship, especially when we look at citizenship as disruptor of existing social practices and science as a disruptor of knowledge. If science is simply about innovation, it's not good enough, because innovation is playing around with a bag of tricks that are already in place. We move from event to event to event. Science is really invention, and science is disruption, which is why science and industry have a very difficult relationship, not something which is easy. In fact, it can also be contradictory. And that is why science needs free play, unburdened by trappings of money, trappings of industry, trappings of politics. It has to go straight ahead on its own steam. And only then will science be promiscuous enough to draw from ideas elsewhere outside of science. Because unless you're very good in your specialization, you cannot have interdisciplinary work. Unless you have a good nation state, you cannot have internationalism. To believe, therefore, that we should muddle through and have no specialization is like, whistling in the wind. We'll never get anywhere. You have to be good in a subject, and because you have to specialize, from there you can think of other things. And to say that because you're specialized, you can't communicate is wrong. Tagore and Einstein communicated. And why did they communicate? Because they're ideals in common. So let us have the ideals of citizenship in common so that people who are specialized can communicate. Thank you.
Very well said. Really, very well said. Nandini, the program you're currently leading at UNESCO states that learners need to identify and navigate emotions, practice mindful engagement, and exhibit pro-social behavior for human flourishing towards a peaceful and sustainable planet. How do you think we can integrate these approaches, right? These are very nice sounding things, but in the School of Liberal Studies or, in principle, how does one integrate these approaches with the curriculum?
So before I go on to answer that question, I want to step back a little and contribute to the discussion that has already begun. And I think one factor which we might not have taken into consideration, but for which we are now ready, is that the whole purpose of education and learning is to build happy beings, okay? And that starts with the brain. And today we are at a unique point in history. Because of the advances in technology, we actually know how the brain works. And it's time to put aside the notion of the brain as a black box, but instead to begin to use and realize that learning is actually biological. Okay? And critical to this notion has been the understanding that humans are essentially social emotional beings. And I think a good realization of that came about during the pandemic when we were all locked in. And you really found that people were anxious because they were deprived from social connect. And you realized that education spaces were first, social emotional spaces and learning spaces second. Okay. So at the heart of all of this learning is a very critical ability to execute all the ideas that you've talked about so far, and that is human decision making. And human decision making is a cognitive emotional process. And you might be surprised to know that science now tells us human adults make close to 30,000 decisions in a day. A child makes close to 3,000-4,000, but an adult makes 30,000 decisions, deciding from what to eat, what to wear, what to teach, how to speak, whom to speak to, and so on and so forth. Yet, when our youngsters come to college and school, we teach them nothing about how to navigate these emotions or how to manage these emotions in the context of learning. So you have bright youngsters sitting in your classrooms whose brains might be in completely different places, and I can assure you they are not learning. And if that learning does not happen, the neural circuitry does not get trained, and that does not manifest in behavior. And so coming back to where Shubhashis posed the question to me is to how do we build human flourishing, which brings us back to the question of what is human flourishing. And if you now rethink about what education was designed for, it was primarily designed to build human capital. And that's the approach we've continued to use. And it's therefore now time to build and think of education as a means to build skills so that individuals can become the best versions of themselves, so they can flourish and ultimately be happy. And at the core of being happy is building good relationships. Okay? And that's where the whole notion of social and emotional learning comes in. And how can you build it into curricula? In order to build them into curricula, we now know that there are practices that we can bring into the lives of people. So for instance, a teacher who is in a classroom needs to periodically pause so that students can introspect or think inwards to see whether they are in states, inner states where they are ready to receive learning, or are they actually distracted? Can the teacher bring in some of these practices in the classroom where you periodically pause to connect children to what's happening there? How do you ensure that the content that you are discussing in the classroom is multisensory in nature? It's not just speaking or writing on the board, but how can you engage the senses? Because we now know the brain learns from all its senses. Now, if we bring in some of these practices, and in addition to this, also ensure that we spend enough time in all our classes, whether it is mathematics, whether it is economics, whether it is politics, that we ensure and implement practices of empathy and compassion. I mean, would you have ever believed that kindness can be taught? Well, now we know that kindness can be taught. You can build neural circuitry for kindness. And ultimately, during the pandemic, what did we need? We needed to be kind to each other so we could get by it. So whilst we develop curricula which are in tune with the 21st century skills, let us not lose sight of what makes us basically human, so that the brain is nourished, and ensure that this is built into not just teacher training and student learning, but is actually implemented in classrooms. Then we can try and hope towards building a peaceful and sustainable society. Otherwise, we can do all the cognitive learning that we do, but unless it is linked with emotion, there will be no action towards the citizenship that we want to bring about. I'll pause there.
Robert, as Dean of Research in a university, and given what you just heard, right? What is the role a researcher could play in all of this?
Thank you very much. Before going into your question, let me first emphasize once again the growing importance of liberal arts education. In my view, it's highly important that before majoring in one field, students learn and explore a wide variety of fields. A liberal arts study is, in my view, by definition broad and interdisciplinary, comprising multiple academic disciplines, including humanities, social sciences, and natural sciences. So a degree in liberal arts will then offer numerous career options as students will become a well-rounded communicator with excellent problem-solving skills. As we all know, the world around us is changing fast, and so are the jobs and skills that the market demands. The young generation, therefore, will not longer start work in one place and work there till the end of their careers. Jobs now require people to continuously upgrade their technical skills, have critical thinking, and take swift decisions with little or no information. So being able to respond fast to the changing environment is becoming essential, and a degree in liberal studies prepares students for continuous learning, critical learning, creative problem solving, and decision making. Coming to your question, so what is the role of schools, faculty, or researchers could play in implementing some of the ideas that have been expressed so far? Now, this is not an easy question, but what I can do is reflect a little bit on how we try to simulate this type of ideas at my own university, University of Groningen, and within my own discipline, the Faculty of Economics and Business. So our university and my faculty and my discipline, as you also know, Shubhashis, traditionally took a monodisciplinary approach, which is reflected in the type of courses that were provided and the type of research that is done. We still very much organize in a monodisciplinary way. However, now we are attempting to stimulate multidisciplinary research and teaching as much as possible, as we all see that multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity is crucial for solving complex societal problems. Maybe it's good here to emphasize that the starting point for you as the School of Liberal Studies is quite different, as you start from scratch with a liberal arts view, where we start from an existing disciplinary structure and now have to bring in a multidisciplinary approach. So I think that we can probably learn more from you than you can learn from us. So we, as you know, at our university had already a university college, which is organized like a liberal arts school, but this school is a little bit separate from the rest of the university and only focuses at the bachelor level. So the main approach we now take at our university as a whole is so-called, we try to develop so-called university-wide schools where different disciplines and departments work together. So for instance, we have a so-called Aletta Jacob School, which focuses on health issues. In this school, humanities, social sciences, and natural sciences work together on health-related issues. Also within my own discipline, the Faculty of Economics and Business, we now very much try to stimulate multidisciplinary research and teaching. I, as a vice dean, try to stimulate it a lot. And what we do is we try to organize so-called multidisciplinary themes. At the moment, we focus on 5 interdisciplinary themes within our own school. And those themes are healthy society, focusing on health issues, energy transition and climate change, digital and artificial intelligence, future prosperity and sustainability, and leadership and governance. Now, these themes in our school should be visible in 3 aspects: in education, research, and corporate connections and impact activities. So we try to combine them. Now, especially maybe relevant now for the discussion here is how we deal with education within these themes. So what we try to do is we organize so-called focus areas where we bundle several courses related to a theme. And those courses are sometimes still disciplinary. For instance, in the theme Healthy Society, there's a course Health Economics, focusing on the economics view on health issues. But we try as much as possible to make truly interdisciplinary health courses, where courses contain insight from economics, management, marketing, other fields as well. So what could you do as let's say, as an organization? In our case, the main thing we could do is set up a clear structure clear incentive structure within which multidisciplinarity activities should take place and can develop and flourish. And in that sense, I think that the startup of your school is a very good example. If you look at the program which is developed, I think that's a very promising way of developing a school of liberal arts. Thank you very much.
Well, that's good to hear. Let me just let everybody know that what you said just now, we actually have done away with the concept of departments. And that's not just in the School of Liberal Studies, actually throughout the university. And instead, we have defined what are called clusters. And the clusters are, very similar, if not, maybe in their operations, they're a little bit different, but the idea is very similar to what we say, or what you said, right? That we pick up an issue and whatever is needed to solve that issue, creates the multidisciplinarity or different experts coming together to solve that one problem in the cluster. So it's very similar to what you said, but I was happy to know that you're going to learn from us. But if you do have something to teach us, please do so from your experimentations that you're doing. It's good to hear that, there are two ways we are approaching the same problem, where the basic philosophy are the same. So maybe we can learn from each other. Navtej, we started a little bit late, so I'm going to push it a little bit, but we are short of time. Navtej, Nandini's program at UNESCO is not simply an Indian objective, right? Because it's an UNESCO objective, and so it's a global desire, if one could put it that way. Now, having been involved with global learning institutions, right, given your experience and all of that, how can the School of Liberal Studies, our own school, be a global player in training young minds to move us towards a just and sustainable society?
Shubhashis, we're short of time, but I do want to say what a great contribution everyone has already made before I start to answer your question. In answer to your question, I think becoming a global player in this specific context, in any context, but in this specific context, it's going to require some transformation. Transformation is an overused word. We use it with emerging technologies and digitization, but it's going to require moving from the way we currently do things to doing things slightly differently. And there are three parts to this, I think. The first, the curriculum itself, which I won't labor on because we've had great contributions from Nandini, Vijay, and everybody else about the curriculum becoming more innovative so that we can put out critically evaluative students. But there are two other aspects to becoming UPS, becoming a global player. And the first is the actual delivery of the education. So I'm thinking about, I don't want to use the word online, I want to use the words non-face-to-face, the whole heap of non-face-to-face ways of delivering education. Online just being one of those ways. But we're venturing into augmented reality, we're venturing into virtual reality. And only 3 or 4 days ago, I read an article in the Financial Times here in London, in the UK, that said in the metaverse, in 4 years' time, all humans will be spending at least 1 hour of their day in the metaverse. And what will they be doing in the metaverse? We will all be learning. The biggest thing that we will be doing in the metaverse is learning new things, learning new ways of doing things, learning new ways of communicating, etc., etc. So the second way of, just to recap this point, the second thing that I want to talk about in addition to the curriculum is that we deliver our education in innovative ways and not rely purely on face-to-face. Face-to-face should not be replaced, but it becomes one of the multitude of ways so that we can deliver education not just to the elites and those who can afford it in face-to-face classrooms, but to absolutely everybody. Finally, and I think I was very pleased to hear that you've already started on this in UPES, generally beyond the School of Liberal Studies, and that is the governance of education itself. That means asking ourselves, are we governing, managing, and leading institutions in the right way? My short answer to this is that most institutions around the world are not leading in the right way. We are a bureaucratic sector. We are a sector with many layers of management. We're a sector of much good discussion and debate, but there are different ways in which we can do this. These need to be explored. Digital technologies, emerging technologies, are one way in which our management and our governance of institutions can become better. But there are also other ways in which we can become better. And I was glad to hear, very pleased to hear just now, and I wasn't aware of it actually, that UPES has started to do away with disciplines and forming clusters. That is already a big change. We're short of time, but let me just recap the three ways in which we become global players. The first is the curriculum, which everybody has contributed so fantastically about. The second way is, how do we deliver education so that more than just 5% of the world can become educated? And finally, how do we manage education? How do we look at ourselves and decide how do we have to change to manage education and govern education in a better way?
Well, it's again heartening to know that we are on the right track. We need to do a little bit more because we're actually touching on all three, right? The curriculum we are trying to design in a very, very innovative way, and that's we are hoping that we'll get all necessary inputs and ideas and suggestions from you all. The second, we are trying to do too, but it's the third one, right? Which you said, which probably we should be able to push a lot more, a lot harder. Narayanan, you have been waiting for a long time, and my apologies for that. But I wanted to come to you at the end because the type of human capital that we are, or human capitalist, let me put it that way, that we are trying to create, right? And what that was being discussed is that they have to be firmly established in their fields and yet work with others who are equally firmly established in their respective fields to solve a common problem. Now, you are already doing it at IIT Kanpur in a very, very big way. So, what enables serious field experts to work together?
Well, it's a hard thing to do everywhere, that for various reasons, mainly because people do not know much about other domains, and the way knowledge progresses, people become very much expert in their own discipline, but not really know much about other disciplines. I was kind of fortunate. I took a circuitous route myself, learning things sequentially, starting from physics, electrical engineering, and then ended up in psychology. And then I ended up in cognitive science, which is on its own interdisciplinary, and that helps actually, because by its own nature, cognitive science, Nandini mentioned it as well, we are interested in psychology, in brain, in computer science, and so on. And that will help, and I hope the School of Liberal Studies will provide a broad enough platform so that people can then appreciate or know a little bit about other disciplines as well. I mean, one of the main things, as you mentioned in the clusters, is that what makes it possible for us to come together are shared interests. We are interested in solving a very specific problem. For example, some of us are interested in how humans do things, why they do it, how we take decisions, for example. And that's essentially what brings people together. The other thing is that we need to be able to have the curiosity to learn other disciplines as we go along. It's really important. I started with psychology. These days I'm reading more economics. I'm sure you'll be happy to know that.
Well, I would have been happier if Vijay hadn't said that we do a worse job than technologists. Vijay, I had noted that. I didn't want to bring it up. But anyway, sorry.
No, I'm not commenting on your job, but I'm just, so the issue is that, I mean, we realize, for example, just to give you an example, we do very rigorous controlled experiments in the lab, and we are reasonably very good at doing it. However, once we take it outside, we have no idea how anything happens because all kinds of things starts interacting with each other. And scaling up is a huge issue. So it's very important then to learn other things, to have the curiosity to learn. That's important, and I hope the students will get that. And the last thing is one also needs to know the strengths and weaknesses, especially the weaknesses of one's own discipline. Because if you know the weaknesses in your own discipline, that is when you start reaching out to other disciplines. So, okay, here is a problem that we cannot solve, that maybe I need to then get somebody else with different expertise, different knowledge domains. I need to go to them and work with them. Because if you think I can, as my own discipline, solve all the problems, then I don't really feel like doing interdisciplinary work. So the weaknesses of one's own discipline, I think, is very important for one to know.
Great. So we started with the problem statement, which Shugata did, and then we analyzed that problem throughout the discussion and ended with words of hope and how to operationalize the solution. Well, now that, that brings us to the end of our discussions, and now is the time to celebrate that special moment that Professor Rai had referred to at the very beginning. So I want Professor Rai back on screen, please. We want our Vice Chancellor back. So what we're going to do is all of us together, through our gestures, are going to officially launch the School of Liberal Studies at UPES. So could we please show a double thumbs up? Thumbs up, please, not down. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all for spending your valuable time with us. And I'm going to seriously trouble you all with designing the curriculum, getting faculty and doing everything it takes to address the problems that you have all, mentioned, and try out various solutions to get to the same objective that we all have. With that, I will now pass it back to Manjari.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gangopadhyay, and our esteemed panelists for this enlightening and thought-provoking discussion. The School of Liberal Studies launch could not have had a better start. It is humbling and inspiring to be at the vanguard of a movement reshaping the education ecosystem in the country. I have no doubt that under the able leadership and guidance of our Vice Chancellor, the Dean, and our advisory board members, we shall meet the goals that we have set out to achieve. We are grateful to everyone who was a part of the launch today. Thank you so much, and have a great evening ahead.